This evening we're going to be reading a bedtime story. Today I've gone for the storybook The Dentist and the Octopus by Michael Copeland. We'll be reading the first chapter, and this is for your relaxation, to help you getting to sleep. Okay. So, first chapter then. Despite what the brochure promoted, Sandy Beach wasn't sandy. It was pebbly. It was more of a giant cat-litter tray than it was a beach. Dr. Beard wasn't disappointed with this discovery, as he also empathised with owning a misleading name. He wasn't a doctor, he was a dentist, and he didn't even have a beard. He was more of a faint moustache kind of guy, but only because it hid the giant hoard under his nose. For some reason, he enjoyed living by Sandy Beach. The location didn't only suit him to a T, but also to an M and a K, and pretty much every other letter in the alphabet. Well, all of them apart from X. He never really liked X's ever since they became too small for him to read at the opticians. Minuscule X's were the sole reason he was forced to wear glasses. Unlike the more popular British seaside resorts such as Blackpool or Skeggy, Sandy Beach was peaceful, just the way he liked it. In fact, it's so reserved, it's impossible to locate it on any maps. Every evening, after his fish and chips, Dr. Beard went rock pooling. It was tradition. It was his little way of cleaning up the beach and putting things back in the correct place. There was nothing he liked to do more after a long day at the surgery than roll up his trousers, grab the nearest net, and go searching for lost sea life stranded in puddles that lay within rock crevices. He never usually found anything more exciting than water or dog excrement, but Dr. Beard was an optometrist. No, sorry, that was a typing error. He was an optimist. Squishy eyes freaked him out. He preferred working with definite solids like teeth. All in all, Dr. Beard constantly clung onto the hope that one day he would eventually come across something interesting. As the sun was drowning into the horizon and the October sky bruised into a streaky purple, Dr. Beard was sure that he had made a discovery during the last millisecond of daylight. He carefully bent down, with one of his hands balancing on a rock and the other keeping his gold-framed specs from falling off his head. The washed-up cephalopod clumsily clambered into his net, wobbling a raspberry-coloured head and trying not to press all of its weight on its injured arm. It stared up at the dentist, almost straining its huge, watery, ink-blob eyes. "Hello." Dr. Beard greeted the little creature. "Hello." A parrot swooped down and sat on the dentist's shoulder. I wasn't talking to you. Shh. The disappointed bird flapped back into his discarded cone of chips. Dr. Beard held one of the octopus's tentacles between his thumb and index finger. It felt like the underneath bit of a tongue, but much colder. He'd never really met an octopus before, so he wasn't really clued up on the correct social etiquette. It became silent. The majority of people would have classed this as a bit awkward, but with Dr. Beard being the type of dentist who persisted on dunking his hands down people's throats, he'd grown used to receiving little, if any, conversation. The octopus just stared at him. He picked up the tentacle again. After further inspection, he noticed a green shard of glass buried inside. "Oh, you poor thing." The dentist rummaged into his rucksack for a jam jar. He scooped up some seawater with it and then carefully placed the baby octopus inside, creating a gentle splash. Dr. Beard tapped the glass and smiled. The little creature seemed as comfortable in the water as a boiled egg in vinegar. "Let's take you home." Dr. Beard journeyed up the metallic black spiral steps to the door of his apartment. His door was varnished white with a round black handle. He placed down the jar and searched through his multiple coat pockets for his keys. With no luck, he began to panic. He couldn't leave a spare under the plant pot or the doormat, as they had been nailed to the ground, because he had no friends or close family members to give copies to. The only other option he had was to hide his spare set in a safe under his bed. "Back pocket," he said aloud. He checked with a tap of his hand, and the back pocket replied with a much-awaited rattle. Dr. Beard took a deep breath and dunked his hand into his pocket. He eventually felt the beak of his rubber duck keyring, squeaked it for reassurance, and then fished it out. "Thank goodness for that," he told the octopus. With all this worry, the dentist had given himself the hiccups. He swung open the door and switched on the lights. He picked up the jam jar and hiccuped. With a reflex jerk of his hands, a bit of water jumped out. "Sorry, little one, let's put you down." "I meant on the floor," he quickly corrected himself. "Down on the floor." Dr. Beard positioned the jam jar on the floor and closed his front door with his foot. He aimed his long white coat on the middle hook of his hat stand, propelled his surgical cap on the top, and dunked his net next to his golf club into the umbrella compartment. Dr. Beard was a neat and orderly man, and his home reflected this. His white walls were freshly coated every month, and his floor throughout was a deep mahogany, varnished twice a year. The reason for his walls being white was because he enjoyed the absence of colour or stain. His days were hijacked with so many mouthfuls of creams and yellows, and in some severe cases, green. The reason for him no longer having carpets was because he consistently vacuumed them, and his neighbour downstairs got him into trouble for noise pollution. After placing his shoes into the rack, Dr. Beard picked up the jam jar once more and walked into his kitchen. This room was his favourite. He loved it that much that certain foods were banned from even entering, specifically onion and garlic. The air maintained clean, with only the subtle smell of mint from the leaves growing in the pot on the windowsill. His fruit and veg were stored in vacuum bags to prevent them from rotting and producing air-ridden smells. Sorry, not vacuum bags, airtight bags. Not the bags he put in the vacuum cleaners. He had to throw them all of them out a while ago. Although his profession had trained him that it wasn't socially correct to gag so easy, he still felt that this was no excuse to harvest bad odours. Anyway, his apartment was open plan, so if he had a horrid smell brewing in one room, that smell would soon invade the entire accommodation. Of course, his self-contained bathroom had to be the exception. The apartment started life with walls, but after noticing a crack, Dr. Beard acted like any other dentist would and extracted the whole lot as soon as possible. He chose to ignore the new spot of mould on the ceiling, as he realised that if he wasn't careful, that this obsession would end up leaving him homeless. Dr. Beard took this washing up bowl out of the sink and secured the plug into its hole. He chuckled to himself. This reminded him of a cavity he'd recently filled. He turned on both taps and allowed the water to run. The dentist took a pair of rubber gloves from a bulk packet in the cupboard. While still allowing the bowl to fill up, the dentist went to look for his toolbox. After finding it, he placed it on the side and turned off the taps. He waited for the water to settle before gently dunking in his left elbow. Just right. The dentist unscrewed a salt pot and tapped out the entire contents. He mixed it into the water with a wooden spoon and picked up the octopus. This time around, the octopus began to wiggle, with tentacles flying and slapping him around the face. Dr. Beard helped it into the sink, where it calmed and began to slowly bob up and down, up and down. He then flipped through the combination on his toolbox to get to his treasured implements. He began to twiddle the curled end of his thin and patchy moustache. Choices, choices. What do you think, Jelly Monster? Size 3 or 5? The dentist picked up the size 3 choices. Good choice, he smiled. Jelly Monster. I quite like that. He looked over at the sulking octopus in the sink. Okay, I'll knock off the ugly surname. Let's keep it short and simple. Dr. Beard gave a friendly wave with his spare hand. Nice to meet you, Jelly. In response, the octopus wiggled her tentacles and dribbled out water. I'm sorry, little one, but this might hurt a little. The dentist leant down, casting a shaky shadow over the water, and gently held the injured tentacle. He then quickly pinched the tiny green shard and pulled. If you ever want to know what an octopus's scream sounds like, try going outside and setting off a car alarm. Luckily for Dr. Beard's delicate ears, Jelly was brave and hardly made a whimper. The operation ran as smoothly and efficiently as he had hoped, and the patient barely flinched. All done. How easy was that? I'd offer you a lolly, but I'm not sure if I can. What type of foods do octopuses like to eat? He then wrinkled his forehead. Is it plural octopuses? I always thought so, but come to think of it, is it octopi? Get my laptop. After an hour and a half of octopus-related research, which had digressed to a mistaken online grocery shop, accidental webcamming, and a virus scare, Dr. Beard felt relatively satisfied that the answer to his question was that they ate fish, snails, crabs, clams, and on the rare occasion, other octopuses. And yes, octopuses, as well as octopi, were both correct. He also found out that Jelly was a female, as all of her tentacles were evenly spread out. Not wanting to give the optician more reason to force more spectacles upon him, the dentist stopped straining his eyes and closed the laptop. He fed his new friend a leftover piece of battered fish from an airtight bag in the freezer, and then went to bed. As nighttime fell, it transformed the sandy beach as subtly as a white sheet turned a child into a ghost. When the streets were dark enough, the shadows always came out to play. They ran past street lamps and waited outside bedroom windows, feeding on people's irrational fears. Because the dentist had sunk too deep into his slumber, he failed to notice that one of these shadows had decided to lurk around his home. His keys had been rattling in the wind, attracting unwanted attention. As everybody knows by now from gazing out of their windows that shadows cannot stay still. They like to wander and flicker and climb. This specific shadow began to climb. The back spiral stairs creaked and wobbled with each step. A shadowed hand grew against the brick wall, completely magnetized by the keys. With one quick grasp of the rubber duck, the keys were snatched out of sight. So that was chapter 1. Once again, that's the first chapter of The Dentist and the Octopus. If you'd like to know what happens next, I'll leave all the links in the description box for the full series so far. Okay? But until next time, have a good evening.